Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, February the 1st in the year of 2022, and welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Thom, brought to you by the Best Girl Consulting Firm. So today is the first day of Black History Month. Black History Month always proves to be enlightening, interesting, particularly if I don't know about you, but I get to learn something new about you. Sometimes I didn't know something I didn't know before, even if it's just seeing the same things from a different perspective. So it adds to the historical journey that we're all traveling on. Much of what we talk about during Black History Month is civil rights. Today, we will travel through some civil rights history and how it relates to the times that we are experiencing today with our G-list guest, Judge U.W. Clemon. Judge Clemon describes himself as being a fighter for civil rights for most of his life. And I haven't been around for most of his life, been around for a lot of his life, and I can tell you he has been a fighter for civil rights. And I am one of those beneficiaries. When things were opened up, I was one that got to go to this school and to do those things because of people like Judge Clemens opening those doors for me. At the age of 13, he witnessed an act of police brutality against a friend of his, which directly inspired his decision to become a civil rights lawyer. While he is a Miles College graduate, he was one of the leaders of the 1962 selective buying campaign, which led to a confrontation with Police Commissioner Eugene Bull Connor. And if you're familiar with Birmingham and civil rights, then you certainly heard of Eugene Bull Connor. Following year, he worked with Dr. Martin Luther King in the Birmingham demonstration and desegregated the Birmingham Public Library. And as I said, things that certain generations did benefit other generations. And I was certainly one that took advantage of the Birmingham Public Library. Judge Clemens was one of two Blacks elected to the Alabama State Senate. One of two Blacks elected to the Alabama State Senate since Reconstruction. In 1980, he was appointed by President Jimmy Carter as the first Black federal judge in the history of the state of Alabama, with unanimous approval by the U.S. Senate. You can't believe that the way things go today, but there was unanimous approval. So Judge Clement will be our G-list guest for today. We're certainly looking forward to having him in just a few minutes. The G-list is sponsored by Mainstream Financial. Mainstream Financial brings financial vision and clarity to your retirement plans. You want to talk to the folks at Mainstream Financial because you do not want your money to run out before you do. This edition of Tuesday of Thom, of course, is sponsored by our partners, the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Let's hear from Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Creates the solution that fits your needs. So let's get to our roundtable regulars and introduce Barbara Wallace Edwards and Michael Walker. Barbara Wallace Edwards, a Mobile, Alabama native, currently living in Birmingham, Alabama. How are you this morning, Barbara?
Good morning, Thom. I'm doing well, thank you. And how are you today?
I'm doing just great. Life's good. And we're in February already. So it's
yes,
Black
we
History
are.
Month. We'll get to learn some things that we probably should have known and didn't know.
So true.
So tell me about you and your civil rights history, Barbara.
I will, Thom, but first of all, let me send out happy birthday greetings to my favorite 13-year-old, my great nephew, KJ Wright, turns 13 today. And I'm so super excited. Of course, he lives here in Hoover as well, and so we'll get a chance to celebrate his birthday today. So happy birthday, KJ.
Okay.
He's not listening. He's in school, but hopefully he'll get a chance to watch the show tonight and hear his birthday greetings.
So you didn't encourage the boy to shoot hooky today for his birthday?
No. He's too smart for that. Even if I tried, I don't think he would allow it. So
Okay, so what's up with you, Barbara?
Well, Thom, I we talked about Black history, and I still remember times, growing up as a young child, having to go to the back of the bus, and so it was really, a life-changing moment for me when Rosa Parks took a seat on that bus and refused to get up, and that's when a lot of things changed. I grew up in Mobile, Alabama, and went to segregated schools from the first to the fourth grade. And so, all of those things that was happening during the civil rights struggle, I was, a recipient of all those struggles that went on during that time. And so it has a huge impact on my life.
I grew up in Birmingham, and of course, whenever people want to talk about civil rights, they point to Birmingham, and justifiably so. How was it in Mobile? How was growing up in Mobile?
It was pretty much the same way, Thom. Again, my family. I remember growing up, and when I was 5 years old, my family bought a house in a diverse neighborhood, and there was a school. The house we purchased, there was a school that was 300 feet from my backyard. And when they were looking for the house, the real estate agent, talked to my parents about the house and saying it was in a great school, near a great school. And my mother went to enroll us in school and found out that it was not for us. It was only for whites. So instead of walking 300 feet to go to school, we had to walk 4 miles to go to school. There was no school buses for us to ride. And so it was a 4-mile walk for us to school every day and back again, first to the fourth grade.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of people don't believe that those things happened. And of course, now I think in Tennessee, the legislature wants to outlaw any of that kind of stuff that's in the school books.
Yes, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I have found, and I think you guys met Sam at the party a couple of weeks or so ago.
Yes.
Sam is a gentleman. There's no doubt about that. He teaches a class at Auburn and of honor students, and I speak to his class every year. And his class, generally, I don't think I've ever had a child of color in his class. It's 10, 12 students, and they're all white. But I can honestly tell you, they're very interested in that part of our history.
Yes.
They're very interested. They're responsive. They want to talk about it, so on and so forth. So it's this generation that's serving in the Tennessee legislature that has decided that they shouldn't know those things.
Yes.
Which is interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say I had a very similar experience. Dr. Aber invited me to come back to Auburn and talk to one of his classes, his history classes, about growing up during the civil rights struggle. And those students were so interested. They sit there for an hour. And again, like you, there was one Black student in this class of about 30 people that were in class. There were others that were watching online. And I don't know the racial breakdown there. But in the classroom, there were about 30 kids sitting there. And they were all so interested and asked tons of questions after I spoke for 30 minutes. They wanted to ask a lot of questions about, well, how did it feel growing up back then? What was it like? And what kind of changes have you seen? And what was it like when you were here at Auburn? So they were very, very interested in that. And I agree. They want to know the history. They want to know what happened and make sure that doesn't happen again.
I tell you what hasn't changed. You mentioned that there was one Black student in that class. 50 years ago, my first class, I was the only Black student in the class.
Yes.
That's not progress.
Not at all.
by any measurement.
At all.
By any measurement. And I think that's something that needs to be overcome and needs to be addressed and talked about, because we don't just duck our heads in the sand and say, it's okay. So, what else you got for me this morning, Barbara?
Well, I want to say congratulations to our Auburn men's basketball team. They're still #1 in the country. Our Auburn women's basketball team beat #4 Tennessee on last week. And University of Alabama men's basketball team beat #4 Baylor on Saturday. And I know we have some South Carolina fans listening too. I think they beat Texas A&M over the weekend. So congratulations to all of those teams for winning.
I sent you guys something, and let's bring Michael on. I think you responded back yesterday, but it was some kind of advertisement for the basketball team. But it was this basketball player with these chains around him.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't quite understand the relevance of the chains. Did you guys get that? Did that make sense to you?
I think what they were trying to show it was the strength of the team. I don't think it was a very good characterization. I would not have used that in any type of advertising, but that came out of Auburn, out of their communications department, I do believe. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's just, it's perhaps somebody with a different perspective should have been there to give it a last look. Because that's the first thing I when I saw it, it's like, oh no.
Yeah.
Michael, your comments.
Well, I didn't get a chance to look at the article, but what you guys are describing, and I don't know this to be the case, it could be that they're trying to display hard work, because in some training routines, people will wear those heavy chains to help, when they're walking, running and stuff, to help from that standpoint. So without really seeing that or reading in depth, it may be a depiction of that, of putting in hard work, working out, putting your time in the gym to make your body stronger. But I don't know.
Then the advertisement was just for a game watch party for tonight. So it wasn't anything supposedly negative, but yeah, I can definitely see where that would be an issue, and people could look at that and say, hey, what's the meaning behind all this? And had they had someone, some diversity that viewed those type of things before they submitted to the public, then yes, I think they could have gotten some feedback and maybe could have made some changes to that graphic.
Yeah, they would have said the optics are not right on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, I'm glad you guys cleared me up. I didn't see it as a working out thing. I saw here this young man is with chains around him.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
we have a history of young men with chains around them.
I understand. I just say that because I've seen that.
Yeah, and I can see that. I'm not disagreeing with that at all.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you kind of made me say, oh, that's what it was. Because I looked at it a couple of times. As a matter of fact, asked a couple of people. And
luckily I'd seen it before you sent it to me, so I had a chance to kind of look at it and think about it for a while before I saw what you sent yesterday. So yeah, my initial thoughts were, how dare them?
Yeah. I didn't go how dare them. I just didn't think it's a perfect example of not having a diversity awareness.
Right.
To me, you just recognize that maybe somewhere in the world somebody was held in chains and it wasn't a positive experience.
Exactly. Exactly.
Anyway, Michael, what's up with you, man?
Well, one thing that I'd like to share with our viewers is that, COVID is dominating the news again, but what the American Dental Association, their dentists have seen more stress-related oral health conditions during the pandemic. People are clenching their teeth more, grinding more, cracking teeth, even fracturing their bite guards that people sleep with to keep from biting down on their lips. And Dr. Raina Stento says that she has referred patients to physical therapists because of pain in their necks, shoulders, and backs. And patients are coming in complaining of headaches and ringing in their ears. All of those are symptoms of grinding teeth at night when you are not aware of it and clenching your teeth. So, and if it goes unchecked, it can cause jaw pain. So COVID is continuing to wreak havoc on our daily lives.
Okay. Barbara, you got any comments?
Well, I agree. I think COVID is going to have a lot of long-term effects on a lot of people. I was speaking to a friend of mine yesterday who was diagnosed with COVID for the second time about a month ago, and she thinks she's still not feeling well. She says her mind is not clear. She's just not as productive as she used to be, and she was complaining about getting all these things to do at work, and she just can't get to them all. And I asked her if she shared that information with anyone on the job, and she had not. So I think it's here to stay. It's not going to go away anytime soon. I thank God for the vaccines. It's even though she was fully vaccinated, again, this is her second round of COVID, and this second round really got her. So she's still having some lingering effects from it.
Okay. Michael, you got anything else?
Yes, I have a couple things from the world of politics. It's kind of interesting. Unfortunately, I find this to be an unfortunate situation, is that Herschel Walker, who played football at Georgia, is running for Senate. He was asked by a reporter, would he vote for the bipartisan infrastructure bill? And Herschel snapped back and said, you must be an Alabama fan to ask me that question. And he further said that, why would you ask me a question about a bill that I haven't had time to read and understand what's in it and all the details of it? So I cannot speak on that. People were left a little bit dumbfounded because the bipartisan infrastructure bill is part of the Open Records Act. It's not legislation that is under wraps, so to speak, until they work out the details. Everybody knows what infrastructure is, which is highways, bridges, and tollways, and that type of stuff. And as a matter of fact, over the weekend, I think, you guys correct me, but I think there was a bridge in Philadelphia that broke and people were killed.
Yes.
And so that's what this bill is about. And it's also a jobs program, but it's about the safety of American bridges and highways. And for a candidate that's running for Senate not to understand what infrastructure is and that is bipartisan legislation is surprising and disappointing to me. But on the flip side, his mentor, the person who talked him into running, was at a rally over the weekend and said, if I'm reelected president, I will pardon all the January 6th rioters. He did say that.
Wow.
Well, that's not surprising.
No.
I think I don't know. I know one person that's glad that Herschel's running, and that's Coach Tuberville, because Tuberville said, "Well, we finally got him off me. Now I got him. He's on Herschel."
That's the first thing I thought of when Michael was talking about that question that Herschel got. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Tuberville's probably one happy man right now.
That's funny.
But I mean, what does being an Alabama reporter have to do with asking that question about bipartisan infrastructure?
I guess that's the answer you give when you just don't want to answer the question. You don't just blame it on someone else.
You don't know the answer.
Right. You don't know the answer. That's true.
Oh, man.
Just blame it on the Alabama fan.
It's going to be a funny
Tom, I saw the look on your face when I said he said he hadn't had time to read the bill and know what's in it. The look on your face said it all. I mean, we're talking infrastructure, and it's bipartisan.
I wonder if he's even read it by now, huh?
He probably don't know where to go look to find it.
Well, I wish him well, but I don't wish him a win. So that's my final statement on Mr. Walker.
Okay.
I got one more statement on Mr. Walker. You
Okay.
say that he has been encouraged to run by the man whose name we don't mention on this show. He used
Right.
to be president of the United States, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But I figure there's a connection somewhere, because that man used to own the New Jersey Generals in the USFL. That's who Herschel played for. So because of history, the man probably still owes Herschel some money. Herschel probably tried to collect the rest of his money. He never got it.
I hadn't thought about that, Tom.
Herschel trying to get the rest of his money, man. Because the league folded up, and it folded up because of the man who's now encouraging him to run for this office.
Yes,
I say, hey, man, go ahead. I'll get you the rest of that money. Anyway, let's move on to the G list. The G list is where everybody is a star, and it's brought to you by Mainstream Financial Group. Can we get Mainstream on here? Please, ma'am. Thank you.
Mainstream Financial Group provides financial services for both individuals and businesses. Mainstream's mission is to understand the unique needs of every client and work closely with you, assembling a team to develop and manage your resources to help you accomplish your defined financial goals. Mainstream's financial professionals will provide you with a complimentary, no-obligation financial review. Now, these professionals can then offer you custom advice to mend together the pieces of your financial life and come up with a plan that is truly comprehensive. Mainstream Financial assists retirees and those close to retirement in planning for a secure retirement, so not to run out of money during your lifetime. You can take advantage of opportunities with tailored advice and the resources to act on it. Mainstream Financial Group, www.mainstreamfg.com, 205-324-0589.
Mainstream Financial Group, don't let your money run out before you do. So let's get to our G-list guest for today. Remember, Hollywood has the A-list, and here on Tuesdays with Thom, we have the G-list, where everybody, it can be a star. Today's G-list guest is federal Judge Uw Clement. Judge Clement was one of Dr. King's foot soldiers. He led the group which desegregated the Birmingham Public Library. And I'd like to just dispense with the rest of the introduction, because it'll come up as we go through it, and welcome Judge Clement to the show this morning. Good morning, Judge. How are you?
Good morning, Thom. I'm very well, thank you.
All right.
Yes, to be here.
Can we just go right into it?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to know your thoughts about the upcoming Supreme Court vacancy, and how do you feel about that, and so on and so forth.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because the United States Supreme Court is, in the view of a lot of folks, and with good reason, the most important of the three branches of government when it comes to the implementation of civil rights. And at any given time in history, the Constitution means only what five members of the Supreme Court say that it means, so that every vote is important. We have, in the history of this country, had two Blacks on the court. The first, Thurgood Marshall, had proven himself long before he ascended to the Supreme Court. His successor, Clarence Thomas, has provided the crucial fifth vote against us every time he's had the opportunity to do so. we have seen just in the last year, the Trump forces approving 2 new justices who are more in the mold of those who have opposed civil rights over the years than those who have sought to advance it. And so this vacancy, specifically designated for a Black female, I think is crucial. And what we ought to be asking ourselves is not what the candidate has done for herself, but what has she done for the race? There is a list of candidates, but and some of them highly qualified, some of them who have done much for the race. But the leading candidate, according to the media in the last 2 weeks, has been a newly appointed judge on the District of Columbia Court of Appeals, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. I believe profoundly that Judge Jackson has done a lot for herself since graduating from Harvard Law School. But I'm familiar with a case, Ross versus Lockheed Martin, where she did considerable damage to Black folks. This was a case in which some veteran civil rights lawyers had worked out a settlement with the nation's largest contractor, Lockheed Martin. It's the largest federal contractor in the nation. It has about 5,500 Black workers, and it has a promotion system that has worked to our detriment over the years. Well, these lawyers negotiated with Lockheed Martin's lawyers, who had, of course, one of the biggest law firms in the country representing it. And they reached a settlement whereby Lockheed Martin would pay $22 million to the Black workers and would change the promotion systems. Now, that's as good as it gets. You've got a settlement, and you know that Lockheed Martin would not have agreed to it if it didn't think that there was some liability. Well, they presented the settlement papers to Judge Jackson, and she denied approval of that settlement. And she did so misinterpreting something that Justice Scalia had said. She said that there weren't common questions of fact in this racial discrimination case. Race is, of course, by its very nature, class. I mean, if you do something to a Black because of his color, and you do it to others, that's a class-wide discrimination policy. Well, the judge didn't see it that way, and so she disapproved the settlement. Then the lawyers tried to litigate the case, and ordinarily, when you try a job discrimination case, and I've tried many in my lifetime, both as a lawyer and as a judge, the Judge Jackson would not allow the plaintiff's lawyer to discover the evidence, to get Lockheed Martin's records. So how can you prove the discrimination without having Lockheed Martin's records. The judge would not allow discovery on that issue, and that's revolutionary in itself. Mm. And so she entered an order denying class certification, saying that she would enter an opinion explaining her reasons sometime later. But in that order, she said that this is not a final order. You can't appeal it. The time for appealing that kind of order is 14 days. Mm. Well, the judge waited nearly 2 months to issue the memorandum of opinion. And she cited a case by the D.C. Circuit that says that she should not have done exactly what she did. And because of her delay, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals denied the appeal because it said it was untimely. Mm. Now, we don't need that kind of Black justice in the federal system, and certainly not on the United States Supreme Court. Mm. And I have contacted Congressman Clyburn's office because we cannot afford another Clarence Thomas in a dress. I was around as a federal judge when Clarence Thomas was being considered, and I couldn't get involved in it as I can now, now that I'm retired. But I had a few old friends like Joe Lowry of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. I represented SCLC in Alabama, and I happened to run into him at the Birmingham airport, and I was talking about Clarence Thomas's record, and he says, "Well, listen, he's from Pinpoint, Georgia. Mm-hmm. Give him 2 or 3 years on the court, and he's going to wake up and discover that he's Black, and he's going to act like it." Well, about 3 years later, I saw Dr. Lowry, and he was telling me that he was planning to have demonstrations on the court of the Supreme Court because of the terrible things that Clarence Thomas had done. I'm not saying that Judge Jackson is a Clarence Thomas, but what I am saying is that what she did in the Ross versus Lockheed Martin case is much closer to what Clarence Thomas did as a justice than what Thurgood Marshall did as a justice. And so I think the Black community ought to pay particular attention to this crucial moment in American history. As I said earlier, there are some very qualified people out there. One of them is Cheryl Knifel, who took the job that Thurgood Marshall used to have at the Legal Defense Fund. There's some young, very committed Black federal judges, Holly Thomas and Candace Jackson Akikwe. They have already shown what they are likely to do if they are appointed to the Supreme Court. And I think that President Biden, with the input of Congressman Clyburn, should carefully scrutinize each of the candidates and determine what that candidate has done for the minority community. And, if appropriate, what that candidate has done against the Black community. So that's where I am on this first day of Black History Month. I'm very concerned about that issue.
Thank you, Judge. We appreciate it very much. I'm going to ask Michael and Barbara to come on and ask a question or two. Barbara, are you there?
Good morning, Judge. How
Good
are you this
morning.
morning?
I'm
It
doing
is
well, thank you.
good. Thank you. It is such an honor to have you with us today. And I have so many questions. I'm sure I won't be able to get to them all, but I want to start by asking you about, I know as a high school student, you was an avid reader and an excellent writer, and you entered an integrating writing contest as a high school student and came in second place in the state of Alabama. And as a result of that, you got letters from colleges all over the country, including Birmingham Southern. But you didn't attend Birmingham Southern. So tell us about that experience and why you did not attend Southern.
Well, Birmingham Southern and Howard College, it's now Sanford University, wrote to me like the other colleges and invited me to come over and tour the campus. And I was very happy to receive the letter because I wanted to go to Birmingham Southern College. I'd seen it as my brother gathered scrap iron and took it from the Westfield dump of U.S. Steel to downtown scrap iron dealers, and we passed by Birmingham Southern. It had a great choir, had a writing department that was very well known, and so when I received the letter from Birmingham Southern, I got a bus from Westfield and went over to the campus. The admissions dean was surprised to see me, to see my color. But he showed me the campus. And at the end of the 15, 20-minute tour, he told me that he was sorry, but that Birmingham Southern was not accepting Black at that time.
Wow. Yeah, that is really sad. And
well, you know, the Lord works things out because
does.
I guess it was 30 years later, I was an adjunct professor at Birmingham Southern College, and they gave me an honorary doctorate, an honorary degree in 2007.
Awesome. That is awesome. Love it.
Michael, let me get Michael in and we'll just rotate.
Okay.
Good morning, Your Honor. Glad to have you with us. My question was kind of along Barbara's, but I'll rephrase it. You ended up going to Columbia for law school. Why did you choose Columbia?
I chose Columbia because the professors at Columbia were more involved in civil rights in the early 60s than any other law school other than Howard. Howard, of course, was a Black school, and I wanted to get an education, a graduate or law school education at a majority white institution, and Columbia was the only one that I thought about. You know, the Constance Baker Motley had gone to Columbia. Robert Carter, who was second in command at the Legal Defense Fund under Thurgood Marshall, had gone to Columbia. And they would do the dry runs for civil rights cases before the Supreme Court, either at Howard Law School or at Columbia. A number of Columbia professors were actually lawyers in the case, in the Brown versus Board case. So it had a deeper commitment to civil rights than any of the other Ivy League law schools. So that's why I went there. It just happened that the dean of Harvard College, John Monroe, had given up his position as dean of Harvard to come to Miles College. Just about the time that I was considering law school, and he wanted me to go to Harvard. His good friend was the dean of Harvard, and that would not have been a problem. But it just occurred to me that Columbia was more appropriate because it was committed to civil rights. A large number of its faculty members were.
Judge, I'm going to ask you a question in a little bit different vein. Let's talk about the suit you filed against Bear Bryant at the University of Alabama.
Well, Auburn had an influence in that regard. Neither Alabama nor Auburn by the mid-'60s had ever had a black player on the football team. Alabama was consistently ranked then and now as one of the very best football teams in the country under Paul Bear Bryant. Bryant probably was the most powerful individual in the state because his team showed that segregationists could have an all-white football team win national championships. And so in the minds of a lot of white folks, that kind of affirmed their belief in segregation. And so a black student at Auburn, James Owens, was selected by then coach Chuck Jordan to be on the Auburn football team. The Black Students Association at the University of Alabama had been agitating for 2 or 3 years, negotiating with Bear Bryant about getting a black player. And so when James Owens went to Auburn and was assigned to the team, the black students at Alabama contacted my law school friend and law partner, Harvey Berg, about filing a lawsuit against Bear Bryant. Well, Harvey left town, went back up north, and so I inherited that client, and so I filed the lawsuit against Bear Bryant. I took his deposition, wow. and he is one of the most personable men I have ever met. I mean, here I was less than 2 years out of law school, and he treated me just as professionally as he did the lawyer for the University of Alabama from the Thomas Tolliver Burr law firm, Mr. White, who that firm is now the Burr Foreman law firm. But Bear Bryant said in his deposition all the things that he had done, and the gist of it all was that blacks didn't want to play for the University of Alabama, even though he had recruited them. Well, of course, I had been in fairly close contact with a number of black high school coaches throughout the state, and we were very anxious to get to trial because we knew we would win it. But a funny thing happened on the way to the fair. Alabama played USC in September of 1970. We would have tried the case the following year, but USC came to town and beat the daylights out of Alabama, and Bear Bryant got religion. He thereafter recruited black players almost with a vengeance. But I think he was more impacted. He was much more impacted by the goings on of Sam Bam Cunningham and those like him than he was by the lawsuit.
Wow.
Okay. Barbara, Michael, you guys got another question for the judge?
I do. I have a follow-up question to Michael's question about going to school in Columbia. I read that you were initially interested in going to law school at Alabama, but they were not accepting blacks. And at the time, the state of Alabama was paying or helping to pay tuition for out-of-state law school students for blacks.
Yeah, if the University of Alabama had been open to blacks at that time, I would have gone.
Okay.
But the state of Alabama had what turned out to be a marvelous program for me. It was but for black students who wanted to take a graduate course that was offered in the state of Alabama at Alabama or Auburn, but not offered elsewhere in the state at the black schools. The state of Alabama would pay the difference between the tuition at the University of Alabama and whatever institution the black student wanted to could get accepted in, and get paid the difference in tuition, at transportation, and at that time, Alabama's tuition rates for Alabama students was very low.
Right.
Columbia was considerably higher, but Alabama paid the difference. After my first semester at Columbia, I decided that I would enroll at Alabama Law School. Mm-hmm. And I was the first black admitted to the University of Alabama Law School. But my professors at Columbia, I was very disappointed because I wasn't making straight A's and B's like I was used to. But my professors wrote me over the summer and convinced me that having come from an unaccredited school into a class where about 75% of the students were graduates of either Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Princeton, or Dartmouth. Mm-hmm. And they said that they were, sure that I would do better. Henceforth, I had done better the second semester, and so I stayed at Columbia. But I was the first black to be admitted to the University of Alabama Law School.
Wow.
Michael?
Yes, Judge, tell me about some of your clashes with then Governor George Wallace over racial issues. Can you talk about a couple of them or something like that we would not know of or haven't heard of?
Well, the one that is not well known is this. Until we blacks were elected in some numbers to the state legislature in 1974, the black institutions of higher learning, Alabama A&M College and Alabama State College, were under the auspices or operated by the State Board of Education. They didn't have separate boards of trustees like all of the traditionally white colleges and universities in the state. Well, Alvin Holmes and others in the House of Representatives introduced a bill that would create boards of trustees in the for Alabama State and Alabama A&M. It passed the House, and Senator Pearson and I handled it in the Senate. It passed the Senate. The governor signed it. But then Governor Wallace decided that he would make the new board of trustees for these two black schools majority white boards. I was chairman of the Rules Committee, which has to confirm all of the gubernatorial appointments. I sent word to the governor. He appointed. Alabama State had 9 new trustees. He appointed 5 blacks. I'm sorry, 5 whites, making the Alabama State Board a majority white board. And one of the newly appointed whites, Thom, a lawyer from Alexander City, had pledged that he was going to put Levy Watkins, then president of Alabama State, in his place, and it started doing so. So I sent word to Governor Wallace that I would approve Thom Radney when he appointed a black to the Board of Trustees of the University of Alabama or Auburn. And so several sessions went by. Mr. Radney remained unconfirmed by the Senate. And so finally, Governor Wallace sent up the name of another black. And so Alabama State and later Alabama A&M ended up with majority black boards of trustees. Another incident was the Alabama State Board of Pardons and Parole. It had never had a black member. It was 3-member board, and 2/3 of the blacks in state prison, 2/3 of the prisoners in the state were blacks. And so there was a vacancy on the board, and Governor Wallace sent up the name of I think it was Henry Gray, one of his buddies, thereby perpetuating the all-white status of the board. And Senator Pearson and I lobbied our 33 white brethren, and I brought that nomination out of committee for a vote for confirmation, and the Senate, including Richard Shelby, voted against the Wallace appointee, and Reverend John Porter, who was in pastor of 6th Avenue Baptist Church and a representative, was appointed as the first black member of the State Board of Pardons and Parole.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, that just goes to show how important it is to have representation at the table.
Yes.
And this past week, I had the honor of participating in a panel for diversity, equity, and inclusion over at Auburn University. And in my closing remarks, I told them one of my favorite books is Do Lunch or Be Lunch. And it's about having a seat at the table, because if you're not there, you may end up being the lunch.
Yes.
No question about it.
Yeah.
Just going back a little bit on the Bear Bryant thing, having dug into that history, many of the coaches in the Southeastern Conference at that time knew that integration was coming, but nobody wanted to be the first guy to go out there.
Right.
And so they were monitoring what was happening at the HBCUs, because that's where all the great players were coming from.
Sure.
Right.
That's where the guys who were going to the NFL. And I will say this about Bear Bryant, and we talked about James Owens, who was first, but James told me about a ride he had with Bear Bryant. And Bear Bryant picked him up in his limousine and took him for a ride.
Did he?
To try to convince him to come to the University of Alabama. But James said he never thought he was really trying to convince him, and he never intended on going. So it was just kind of an exercise. And the other thing I wanted to say, I know that I've heard some of the gentlemen, Joe Reed and some of the other guys, talk about conversations with Governor Wallace and so on and so forth. And so the question I want to, and I know that in my encounters with Governor Wallace. You know, he was head of the board of trustees for the universities, and so he would show up at the games. And we had a Black girl become homecoming queen, and of course, he had to escort her out on the field and all that. But I guess the question, and when we would fly out of Montgomery, and of course, at that time James was gone, and I was the only Black guy on the team. Yeah. He always made a point to come talk to me, and one time he said, you know, believe it or not, I'm on your side, and it's like, well, what side is that? What side that is?
Well, let me relate two experiences. One personal. You know, as chairman of the Rules Committee, all bills had to come through my committee to be placed on a special order calendar for action by the legislature. And I think this was in 1977. Wallace had a bill that sailed through the House, which would have provided him 4 state troopers for the rest of his life. And I was doing a little radio show, comments from the Capitol, on a local Black station here in Birmingham, and I had vowed that bill would never see the light of day. And we were on the last day of the session, the last night of the session, around 9 o'clock, and the bill had not been placed on a special order calendar, and said that we were about to adjourn sine die without passing the bill. Well, Governor Wallace sent one of his lieutenants up to me and asked me to come down to his office. Well, I'd been there before with other senators and various things, but this time I walk in the room. I've forgotten the guy who brought me down. He backed out, and it was just me and the governor. And the governor started out by saying that he was a lonely man. His wife had left him, and his children were grown up. And he told me that he had tried to help the Black community, that he was in the legislature when they authorized the Winona State Trade School, and he had tried to help, and he ended up by saying, I need your help. Would you please let that bill pass? And so the bill did pass, but it cut it down from 4 state troopers to 2.
That was, and he did very well. Well, I guess that's very well has to be defined. But in his last run for the governorship, he did well amongst the Black vote.
Well, I was. This is after I came on the bench. I made a speech at some kind of conference in Philadelphia. And, as I sometimes do, I go over and talk to the Black folks. There's a bellman there. He was an older guy. And he said that Bear Bryant in earlier years had stayed at the hotel several times and had struck up a conversation with him. And Bear Bryant told him that there would be a day when Blacks would play for the University of Alabama, but a Black would never be a quarterback.
and he recruited Condridge Holloway, who ended up going to Tennessee, but he told Condridge he couldn't play quarterback.
Yeah.
He was straight up with him.
Yeah.
Judge, you got anything else you want to share with us this morning before we get out of here?
Well, I think that's about it.
Okay.
Just remember this Supreme Court vacancy, and
we will,
and the attention that the Black community ought to be paying to the filling of that position.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time and for your wisdom and your history. It's just wonderful. It's always good to see you.
It's my privilege. Look forward to seeing you after COVID.
And thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for all you've done.
Everything is post-COVID these days. So
Yes, it is.
We'll see. Well, thank you
all.
so
Enjoy
much. And let me close out the show here. We're going to close out the show. I think we're close to a time. And so I'm just going to say that this is how I see it. On February 1st in the year 2022, it's been a wonderful show. We hope to bring you other Black history moments throughout the rest of this month. And that's going to be our show for today. So thank the audience. We appreciate you. We thank Michael Barber. Thank our G-list guest, Judge U.W. Clemon. It was absolutely wonderful. And we hope to be able to talk with him again. Thank our sponsors, Best Girl Inc. and Mainstream Financial Group. I want to thank Emily Hedrick, the communicator, our producer. Thanks, Sean Jones, the organizer. Remember, enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.